Right, so I need, okay, great. So here we go. Welcome everyone. Natalie Cutler-Welsh here from Go To Girl and If Only They Told Me. I have started doing a series of interviews, really chats, with people that I think are forging the way and that are helping on various levels. And this is helping me because, as you may or may not know, I'm on a mission to save 1 million marriages. Now, that might sound crazy, and some people go, why do you have to save them? And I have to acknowledge that sometimes the best thing you can do for a marriage is let the two people go their separate ways. So I want to acknowledge that as well. But one of the things I'm doing is bringing on some people, experts in their own field. And the other week I had the lovely Celia Hogan on. We talked about getting kids outside. We talked about nature play and getting kids outside, which I think relates to a whole bunch of other things about getting them away from the iPad, stressed out moms, etc. Today I'm talking to Judith Paterson, and she's from Positive Life Balance. We are going to be talking about adolescence and adolescent depression. So this is something that is a big, heavy topic. I'm so excited to dive into it with Judith. And from my perspective, I've definitely seen a lot of teens, going through some stuff, some hard times, and I feel like that trickles up to the parents and affects their relationship. And similarly, when the parents are going through whatever they're going through with life and business and money and whatever, that trickles down to the teens. And so it kind of flows both ways. And that's why I'm excited to cover this topic. So Judith, thank you so much for coming on today. I'd love to welcome you. Can you just start off by telling us a little bit about your backstory, how you got to this place, and how it is that you're helping people today?
Great. Thanks, Natalie, for inviting me to do this, because this is really cool. I'm loving this idea of being able to help people in their marriages and their families and things like that. And I was a teacher for many, many years. Still, I guess I am, because I'm always teaching people about various things that I've learned too. But as a teacher, I majored in science and PE. And because of that, when I came across the kinesiology muscle response testing, I really did have to question, where is this? But what I have found is wonderful, because we can get away from what people can talk out and they think in their head, but we get down into the cellular memory. And so it really helps people shift a lot of the stuff that they've been holding on to so much quicker. And so rather than just going through counseling and just talking about what they know, we find out the stuff that they don't know, but they've been holding on to for many years.
That is so good. My daughter had a program in her school just the other day talking all about resilience. And I know that it's such a buzzword and it's so important. And I imagine some of the work you do, does it help people, adults, teens, kids, to be more resilient as well?
Totally. And in fact, I run a program in a school as well too, called Creating Confident Women. And that goes right the way through from, young children, to be quite honest, creating this confidence right from the very start. And it's been lovely to be invited into the school and invited back next year to run something similar, but sort of more advanced in a lot of ways too. So that's very cool. I'm really thrilled that schools and parents are actually understanding that we do have to really work at creating this confidence. It doesn't necessarily just come naturally.
I think that, and I'll just dive into that a little bit more. We hosted a party on the weekend, and one of the parents was saying, it's good that the kids have to fill out this survey about how resilient they are. He goes, but then I had to fill it out too. And the thing is, we never grow up, right? Like, even as adults, we still go through phases of feeling not confident and not secure, and we're not clear on our path, and we're not focused, and we're beating ourselves up in our head and all that stuff. Do you feel like it's just part of life?
It's totally part of life, and it's really a question of life just comes out of left field, and it's really not. In fact, I'm quite surprised. A couple of people have said just recently, oh my gosh, I'm imagining your life is just such a breeze and everything like this. And I said, really? Why would you imagine that? I said, the skills that I've got actually allow me to shift the things that come out of left field and to be resilient, far more resilient. And what's the saying? There's a lovely quote. Let me think. Life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's learning how to dance in the rain.
Nice. Nice. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to add that to the little description above. That's so cool. So you're doing some workshops about resilience and things like that. We're going to dive into today's topic, which is about adolescent depression. The reason that I got you on is because I'm on your email list, because we've been friends for years and business colleagues and everything. I got your email, and there was just something that you mentioned that really triggered something in me. And I think it was about the statistics in the UK of kids that are on antidepressants. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it really is. It really shocked me me too. I'm really quite a fan of this particular program, which is called The Doctor Who Gave Up Drugs. And if anybody is interested at all, Natalie, if they'd like to send me an email, I can send them the links and things like that. That'd be great, because I think once they see this email, it's a shocking thing in the fact that in 2005 in the UK, 30,000 children under the age of 18 were on antidepressants. Now, 2015, which are the latest statistics, there are now 58,000. And that's frightening. It was just absolutely shocking that it kind of almost doubled in those 10 years. And it's just going up fourfold in a lot of cases. And it's starting way back when they were young kids too, with just being given so much Calpol. I mean, I was staggered to find, in fact, that Calpol is used sort of like to calm people down. I mean, it's supposed to be for pain. But again, in England, there are 5,220 litres of Calpol bought every single day.
I don't even know what that is. Is it a
Calpol is something, it's like a pink drink it's actually a paracetamol-based thing. But again, parents get used to calming children down then, and children get used to taking drugs and things right from that early age. And I think that's where a lot of it's coming from. And it's very interesting that I've been finding when their parents bring their children to see me, and I'm always encouraging the parents to come themselves, because you mentioned that before. It's sometimes it comes from the parents, and in fact, quite frequently, the children are actually not wanting to take the drugs. But the mothers have heard that, in fact, there's scientific evidence that shows that there is such a really good reason for taking the antidepressants. But in fact, when you start reading the information, now I went down to my local pharmacist, who's a good friend, and I said, Ali, can you please fill out some information? And she gave me this information. These are the full list. Now, these are actually in a smaller form in each of the boxes of antidepressants. And when you read this, it is absolutely frightening, because it actually says some analysis from pooled studies of antidepressants and psychiatric disorders found an increased risk for suicidal ideation and or suicidal behaviors in pediatric and young adults of 25 and younger. Because their brains are not wired like adults. And in fact, one of the things that was shown up in the documentary, the BBC documentary, was that in fact, of the 14 antidepressants that are given to teenagers and children under the age of 18, of the 14, only one may possibly work, but even that one has so many side effects that they really don't like giving it out. Or in fact, some doctors who have done all the studies really don't want to give it out.
Oh my, it's so tragic, because I feel like some of the moms, and dads, they obviously want to do something. They want to be empowered and have something. So they turn to these drugs, and it's kind of, I guess to a certain extent, like if everyone's doing it, like it must be okay, right? It almost becomes the new norm. And what I find with the work I'm doing, I'm really into essential oils. And I find that it gives moms, I always talk about it, gives moms a tool belt, right? Of like whatever life throws at them, they can reach for the oil. Now, those are natural products. And there's definitely a move towards more natural. I know you do a lot of natural products. So do you think people are changing, or do you think it's like the statistics you threw out were crazy. I'd love to know the percentages as well, because obviously population growth, there's that. But even the stats are astounding and tragic. Do you feel like it's getting worse, or are people actually slowly moving to more natural alternatives, and also hopefully processing their emotions and dealing with their problems, which is all part of it?
Yeah, there's absolutely a brilliant quote. Now, let me just find that.
Amongst all your paperwork.
No, I just sort of suddenly thought, I'll grab that. But it's really interesting because, sorry about the rustling, a memory without an emotional charge is called wisdom. And this is the thing that sometimes when we're talking things out and bringing this up again, and this is what I'm hoping to encourage parents to sometimes to let go of the stuff and not sort of constantly asking, oh, are you feeling okay today, dear? Are you feeling okay? Now, sometimes, unfortunately, parents are really rushed, they're really busy, and they haven't got the time to spend time with building up the skills that are required for these children. Because again, we need to learn right from a young age to be able to make choices, to be able to solve issues. And sometimes, I'm sure you've heard the parents will say, and I'm sure we all do it, we say, oh look, it's much quicker if I just do it. And that sometimes we're not allowing the children to actually solve an issue. And I've gone off track with where you were going, but you asked about this whole thing. And I do think that sometimes parents, with the best of intentions, listen to some advice that they really have to do their own investigatory type things, because again, we cannot make informed choices unless we've got that information. And I think it's really important not to just throw a pill in and just hope for the best. We've got to read the side effects, because the fact that I had a client come to see me with her daughter. She was 15 years old, and she'd been put onto a particular antidepressant, and it wasn't that one that they say may possibly work. It was another one, and she was feeling, worse when she took it. So the doctors said, well, let's increase it. And unfortunately, that made her, or brought on seizures. And even though they did eventually wean her off, she's still having those seizures on a daily basis. And it was brought on specifically from the drug. And it's just not fair.
Was that one of the side effects?
That was one of the side effects. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about how you've got this movie. We'll put the link below where people can get in touch with you if they want to watch it. Shocking statistics, a bit of a wake-up call. So what is it? What do you think? What can parents do then? Obviously, we can do our research. We can do our homework. Yes. What can parents do? And I'm the same. I mean, my kids are younger, so I'm not in the adolescent depression.
But this is where it starts.
But I know so many people, right? And I mean, everyone knows someone whose daughter is anorexic, self-harming. They've tried overdosing, or son. It's great. It's almost like back in the day, someone knew someone who knew someone, right? Now everyone knows someone, it almost seems, and it's quite tragic. So what do you suggest to us parents? Like, what can we do to either, if you're like me with the young kids, to kind of prevent anything like that from happening, or if you're in the thick of it, what can people do?
Okay. Right, what they are finding really works well is, first of all, allowing people to make choices from one out of two things. Don't overdo things. Don't say, well, what do you want to do today? It's a question of, would you like to do this or would you like to do that? Start from a young age. And just build up on those sorts of things. The other thing to remember too, that even though people are young, I know of children who are the age of 8 and are taking medication and antidepressants. I mean, that's quite scary. Building choices. Again, unfortunately, climbing trees seems to have been almost outlawed in some schools and things like this. But again, building that confidence. Having seen Pink the other day, my gosh, she is fierce and she's confident and she does these amazing things. Encourage your kids to get out there and actually just be confident. Letting go of past emotional things that are attached to experiences. Just talk about it as, okay, that happened. I'm a great fan of mind power work, and I've been working with that for 8 years now with the John Kehoe project. And also I'm just about to, in October, I'm attending the Joe Dispenza work too, which is absolutely superb. Similar sort of stuff. So again, building up this thing, knowledge that thoughts are real forces and words have power, and use the words that are empowering. Developing new skills, and one of the big things, eating well. There is enough proof to show that, in fact, sugar and sugary things, which a lot of children are living on, can lead to depression. There's a really good article in September's version of North and South, Beating the Blues. And it's all to do with the fact that too much sugar leads to depression. The other thing is meditation. There's a great film coming around now called A Mindful Choice, and it's a great New Zealand film. Fantastic information, lots of documentary sort of discussions and things like that. In England, I was talking about the fact of this wilderness project, but out here we've got wonderful things too. There are a lot of people that are probably running out things, and you mentioned about the lady you were talking to last week who was running and encouraging kids to get out there. There's Outward Bound. There's things like Spirit of New Zealand. Yay!
I used to work at Outward Bound. Yes.
Well, there you go. And those are the sorts of things, because again, it can be a one-on-one. Children are learning how to face issues. And again, there's a lot of problem that has come through being bullied and things like that, and that can then lead to it. But again, it's learning how to just deal with these issues, and sometimes you have to go up, up high to be able to, to stop this stuff happening. But it's also giving confidence so that in fact children don't get bullied so much. We need to learn how to be confident.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I am a massive advocate for, resilience and confidence. And sometimes you do have to go through a bit of something to be able to, but I feel like, if kids learn that's resilience, I want to be clear, because I went and spoke at my daughter's school about resilience. And I spoke also in Australia, in Sydney, about resilience. And I really wanted to highlight, it doesn't mean just getting knocked down and getting back up again, right? It's like sometimes you actually have to say, you know what? No, and you have to take a stand, and you have to have the confidence to, speak your truth or say what you actually want. And I'm a big believer I really think a lot of, I would love to know your thoughts on this. My thoughts on happiness and things, I think to a certain extent, if more people actually said what they want, like a lot of people have it in their brain, but they don't say it. And because they don't say it, they get angry or they get frustrated or they bury down those emotions. And then they're living in that way. I mean, that's quite a simplified version, but I think if you peel back the layers on a lot of things people are struggling with, often they're not actually saying what they want.
It's so totally true. And that's why actually this coming Sunday, that's the 9th of September, I'm running a positive communication course for that very reason. Because again, sometimes we can have all of this stuff coming out and we just, I know what I want to say, and then we don't know how to get it across. It is so important. Actually, it's interesting because one of the 5 regrets of the dying is that I wish I'd been able to express myself more clearly.
Oh, really?
And it's really, really important. Those 5 regrets are just really important. But expression of oneself and getting it across so people can hear you is one of the biggest things for building confidence.
Is that the type of thing you do at your workshop? Help people to actually express?
Yep, that's exactly what I'm doing with that. And
you get them to write it or speak it?
We work through a workbook, which I've got somewhere. But again, we go through skills. It's actually based on the what's it called? It's the Marshall Rosenberg nonviolent communication. But I've built it around because, again, I'm very hot on words have power. And so I call it positive communication rather than nonviolent. But it's based on that theory. But again, I'm using then a lot of kinesiology techniques. And in fact, Amy McCauley, she and I have just run a workshop called Life Hacks, or Positive and Powerful Life Hacks. And we're going to be running another one in November. And that, again, will build more skills and show people how they can actually build their confidence, because there's an awful lot that we don't realize. It's hidden away. We don't see it in the mirror, but there's so much more to us. And very simple little techniques can be very quick and empowering ones.
When you talk about kinesiology, are you talking about linking words and movement together to really strengthen them?
Sorry, kinesiology is like an umbrella, and I use it. I was trained in England with the kinesiology. There's so many different styles and different types, but I have specialized more in the emotional and in the food, the things like that, with testing for food intolerances, because again, that can bring us down if we're feeling that, and which comes first, to be quite honest, is it the emotions that come first and then leading to the food intolerances. And then of course you've got that vicious cycle, because once you take on more of those foods, then of course you feel more depressed. So again, it's one of those things. There's a whole variety of things, but kinesiology, in my sense, is more the muscle response testing. And so we use a variety of things. I normally use a half an arm or a full arm or something like that, so people can really feel. And once they start to trust their body, because I do believe that this muscle response testing is like training wheels for your intuition. Once we start gut instinct and that whole thing, then we can say, and there's a very good reason why it's called gut instinct too, because again, there's such a link between our emotions and what goes into our gut.
I love that. I mean, I'm quite woo-woo in my own way. And I had a friend here the other day, and she was saying, I just can't get rid of this cough. I just have this cough. And I was like, what is it that you're not saying? What is it you're not speaking your truth and all that as well. I think there's something to be said for that, definitely. But I think also when someone, I was doing a class a few weeks ago in Wellington, and someone had this really, she was really having sore tummy pains. And I was asking that question, well, what's going on in your life? and I'm sure you'll be along these lines of thinking, what's going on in your life that's making you sick to your stomach, or what is it that's going on in your life that you just can't stomach? And quite often it is that emotional link that presents as a physical. Yes?
Totally, totally. And in fact, last week, a couple of weeks ago, I went and listened to Dr. Brian Broom, who is an immunologist and a psychiatrist. Yeah, he's a psychiatrist. And it's interesting, he's now sort of semi-retired, but it's interesting to hear the doctors now. He's been doing this for many years and going from that particular aspect to an angle, which is so wonderful to see the doctors. But it was also amazing because a lot of the people in the audience were from the medical profession, and they were a little bit, oh yeah, right, and raised their eyes and sort of rolled their eyes out loud almost. But it is so vital, and it's so lovely to see that there are people in the medical profession now who are asking, so when did this start happening? What happened? And as soon as people can find that whole link, then we can actually start really working on things. So we then have to deal, obviously, with the symptoms, but it's finding the cause that's the most important situation.
So I'm going to bring it back to the depression now. So I was chatting with a friend yesterday, and she was saying that she's having so many people come to her lately telling their depression story, because she also has been through that journey herself. And she said, I don't know anything about this, I don't know if you do, but there's kind of 3 different types of depression. One was like more hormonal, one was hereditary, and one was situational. Have you heard of anything like that?
Yes, I have. I'm inclined to think that we can deal with all of them in the same sort of way, in a lot of ways, because again, the hormones can come from a variety of emotions. And I went through it. I can remember if somebody had given me a bottle of pills. This is going back, how old am I now? When I was in my 30s. So that goes back quite some time. But again, that whole depression, and it was all because I wasn't able to get pregnant. It was unexplained infertility and had gone on for 10 years, and I had it. And so, yeah, something can trigger it off. Now, whether or not that was hormonal, as far as, whether or not it was just the fact that that particular day I'd got my period. A friend had rung to tell me that she was pregnant with her 3rd child, and Plunkett came round collecting for it. So again, which was it? Situational? Was it emotional? Was it actually hormone? Who knows? But the point is, all I knew I had to actually work through, and this is well before I was in this field. I mean, I've been in this field now for 20 years, and looking at it, I do believe that if we can get the body balanced, the body does its own healing. I don't do the healing. It's just a question of bringing everything back into balance, and then the body just goes, and takes a bit of breath. And I often find that in my clinic situation, that somebody will actually give a great sigh, or they'll yawn a lot or something like this, and this is actually the release and bringing that body back. It's like a jigsaw part where everything just goes into that situation. So again, depression, we deal with it in the same sort of way. There'll be some talking, but again, we can cut through. I've had clients who have been psychiatrists themselves, and they said, this is interesting because we can actually manipulate what we say. However, when you're testing, you're going deeper into it and finding out what the chakras are telling us, what the things, and we cannot lie about that. We can't say what we want. And again, sometimes, and I am saying sometimes because it's not forever and not always, but in my particular case, I found I was going to a support group for a wee while, and I was asked to run a support group, and I got out of it very quickly with this unexplained infertility, because then I realized, my goodness, everybody was actually bringing up their own dramas. It was becoming emotionalized, and that was actually almost increasing the whole issue. So in fact, sometimes, as we said, Joe Dispenza said, we've just got to remove the emotional component to it and actually look at it from a different perspective and say, well, what did I learn from this?
I agree. I think a lot of people, talk therapy definitely has its place, certain part of like expressing what happened.
Absolutely.
But if you run over it over and over again, you kind of reaffirm it, and you almost sometimes would embellish it. But I think, yeah, that's right. So sometimes just getting back to balancing yourself, that sounds
true. And this is where they're finding that meditation is becoming so empowered, and people are realizing now that they've done sort of brain scans with people who've done the meditation, and it makes such a difference. It really does. And if people can get to see that film, a mindful choice, it will hopefully, because again, it's one of those things, if we emotionalize a situation, it just escalates.
Yeah.
So we need to learn how to pull back from the negative emotions. And again, this is where the muscle response testing can actually show where it's sort of hiccuping along the way.
So if we've got some parents, watching this, and please go ahead, you guys, comment below. You can ask questions. I'll get Judith to come in and answer a few here and there. But what if someone's thinking, well, I don't know if I just have a moody teenager or a depressed, teenager. Is there some signs or indications that people can kind of look for? Is it a lot about the languaging, how they're speaking, or the behavior?
It's a lot to do also really finding out, and again, if children and parents can communicate properly and clearly, that can often solve a big issue. It's surprising how frequently, if we can explain how we feel, and again, this can be prompted by lists of words. I often go through lists of words with people saying, well, actually, what sort of things do you actually feel? Then we can find out, because it's feelings and needs, and often this is where it gets lost in the whole thing. So I believe that it's where it cuts across. And I think that when it gets, I hesitate to say that there's somebody is depressed. It's really a question of where do we find that whole, what would I call it? It's almost like a seesaw. And again, it's really important to find that things and actually stop that in its tracks before it gets overpowered. And also, there can be, in some occasions, and I hesitate to, I'm just thhinking of my words here, but there are occasions when, in fact, the parents get to a certain extent, oh my gosh, well, my child actually, they've become very depressed. And it's really a question of finding out whether the child is actually unhappy and where does it actually fit. And again, there have been people who've come to see me and they want their child to be ill. And that sounds really harsh, but in fact, it gives them a sort of an empowerment. Oh yes, but my child, there are ways of being able to deal with this before it gets to that stage. It's so important.
I imagine that's not obviously every case, but it is an occasional case where a parent wants a little bit of acknowledgement, attention, or something like that. I mean, there might be a genuine situation with the child, but they kind of, or maybe they want a label, like they want to know what's going on.
Yes, that's exactly it. But there are ways of being able to deal with this, and it's very interesting if we can actually get into that. Yeah.
Now, coming back to my marriage thing, because I feel like I know a ton of people whose teenagers, 20-year-olds are going through stuff like this, right? And that's going to have a lot of strain on the marriage, on the relationship. And what happens in my house, okay, it's not the strung out teenager. It's even just one of my kids, who doesn't want to do his, he wants to quit the soccer team. And I'm like, oh, but look at him. He doesn't need to keep doing it. My husband's like, yes, he must, stay on the team and commit. As parents, we have different views on how things should be handled, right? And when your child is sick or injured, or even Jonah with his alopecia, Matt and I reacted really differently. He didn't understand why I was so tearful and emotional about it. Whereas I didn't understand why he was so cut and dry about it. So as parents, we care so much, we react so differently, and that can actually pull us apart when it's a time when we need to pull together, right? Have you seen this happening?
Totally, absolutely. And this is why being able to communicate clearly is so important. It really is. And developing those skills is just such a major part of life, really. Yeah, because as soon as we can express ourselves, then people can hear, rather than, oh, no, I'm fine, sort of thing. As a child, say, no, fine. But again, it's a question of learning, and the better you can express yourself and more clearly, the better. And it's not something that we necessarily know how to do. We don't necessarily learn it in life.
I think in my line of work that I'm doing at the moment, doing a lot of wellness consults, and I find people sometimes don't know how they feel, but they know how they don't want to feel. Like that's almost easier to answer. And so sometimes
we start with that sometimes. Yep.
Get the ball rolling.
Totally.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to, just before we wrap things up, can you give some examples of people that you've worked with, whether it be one-on-one or in your courses that you run? Just some examples of the changes that people have seen.
Oh, right. There have been so many. I'm just trying to think of, well, there's one lady in particular I'm thinking of who...
Without breaking confidentiality, obviously.
No, not at all. No. But again, I didn't know that she was ready to actually do the deed as such and finish her life. And she said, just what a difference, just finding out how she actually felt about things made it such a difference. And just those little things, because depression can come on from various ways. And again, it's usually that people aren't heard. And again, sometimes being heard is not actually the issue with the person who's listening, it's the person being able to express it. And as soon as we can actually express ourselves and things like that. So to pick out one particular person, I would say that it's just, if you can imagine being able to express yourself and being able to be heard, then you're going to make a huge difference in your life. It really is, because there have been so many that it's saved marriages. Because, like you say, Natalie, it's just a question, it's made such a difference. And the number of people who are saying, oh my gosh, just coming along and learning how to talk and how to express myself. And sometimes people come in, and in fact, I've got some people that have been on the workshop, and there are some coming up on a different workshop who are actually coming as husband and wife, so that they can both learn. So it's not a question of one person going back and saying, well, this is how you do it, because again, that can cause an issue in itself. Yes. So again, partnerships are all right from the start.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up. I know that you've got, tell me what else you've got coming up, and I'll put the links below. And how can people follow you on?
Fabulous. Okay, right. Well, next weekend, as I say, on the 9th, we've got the Positive Communication Workshop going on. As I mentioned before, the increase or the sugar intake is a really big thing as far as depression is concerned, because it really causes that. And I've got an ongoing I Reduced Sugar program.
I forgot you were the sugar lady. You've got this massive program. Yeah.
But it's really easy. And people go, oh my God, I thought it was going to be hard. And in fact, one person that did it, she did it with her 7-year-old and his 5-year-old just prior to Christmas. And she said, oh my God, I don't know why I did that. But in fact, it was brilliant. And so there are games that the kids can play and everything like this, but it's a 3-week program and it's amazing. And as I say, I call it reducing sugar, because I'm wanting to people reduce the natural sugars as well, because in fact, fructose is one of the things, so that's fine. Then we've got another one coming up on the beginning of November. I'm working with Amy McCauley, and we're doing this powerful and positive hack.
I love Amy. I've interviewed her before as well.
Oh, she's great, isn't she? Well, we just get on really well. So there's another 4-hour session that we do that. But again, and then if people want to contact me on a one-to-one basis, or even if they're just thinking, oh, I wonder if this is something Judith can have a look at, and we can work on a one-to-one, that's brilliant. And we can sort things out very, very quickly. But if people like to go on to either positivelifebalance.com and ireducedsugar.com, and those 2 programs may well help. It's great.
Excellent. Cool. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Hey, you guys, I'd love your comments below, just to hear your thoughts on anything we've covered today, which is basically focusing on adolescent depression and looking for, even noticing things like languaging and diet as well. It's something that I guess a lot of people don't join those dots, but it's massive. We've got 2 great videos that we're going to put the links in that you guys can watch. And we're basically just, here to help and here to, for me, stimulate conversation, because I'm on this mission to save 1 million marriages. Can't do it on my own. I need everyone's help. And thank you so much, Judith, for joining us today.
Our pleasure. And if anybody wants to contact me, please know that it's just completely confidential, and I would love to hear from you. It's lovely. Great. Awesome. Thanks, Natalie.
Yeah.
Bye.